Hi, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Corporate College Facebook videos, where we get to dive into great topics with some of our subject matter experts. I'm joined today by Andrea Peck. She's a member of our Corporate College Talent Bench, teaching some of our programs like our Frontline Manager, as well as dynamic presentation skills. And today we're going to talk about communication myths. I'm so excited to have you here today, Andrea. Thank you for joining us.
Ashley, thank you very much for having me today. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun to talk to you. I always get to learn so much more about our subject matter experts. And of course, you're going to give a little piece of that great knowledge that you have. First of all, could you talk to us a bit about your own background, how you became interested in communication skills?
Sure, I'd love to. So, in terms of my background, just general background, I have degrees in psychology and communications. I did a little training at the Gestalt Institute, and I also am a certified coach. So all that's great. I think the most important question that you asked is, how did I get into this? And the thing about it is that it really was like a kind of a personal mission. So I got into it because I found communication really challenging when I was growing up. And I mean, I don't want to blame my parents, they did their best. And I
We
am the
can't
youngest.
though. Don't worry.
You're right. I am the youngest of four, so there was something going on there. But two things. I think one, I really wanted to feel more confident when I was communicating and about myself, and I knew that I needed to learn skills. So that was kind of what drove me. And I don't know that I knew that I was going to pursue it professionally initially, but it just sort of snowballed from there. So it worked out.
That's awesome that you got interested in it. Why do you think it's important for individuals to, learn and develop communication skills and styles?
So the thing is, just like with myself, I mean, I'm not different than anybody else. And I do think that a lot of other people, that it's really helpful for their confidence to work on their communication. And also to learn the skills. So the thing is that it's the confidence is kind of, there's the internal communication that goes on. So by learning about the communication process, you really learn more about yourself, and you really start recognizing what your own skills and your contributions are. And then in the process, it never hurts to learn specific skills to express yourself externally to other people. So I think it's really important. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that they say that in like work situations, in terms of job satisfaction, that our job satisfaction is impacted not only by what we do, but by our relationships in the workplace. So it's equally important. It makes a huge difference. As far as you don't have to be the most skilled person actually to get ahead in the world. You have to be good enough. But I find that people who are also really skilled communicators seem to do really well.
What a connection though to like both being like introspective as you're going on this journey, but also to develop those relationships in the workplace. And I'm sure many other areas of life that communication skills really flow to. So let's jump into these communication myths. I was so excited when you mentioned them because every single one is so relevant to everybody. The first one, if we could talk about, is myth number one. A lot of people believe good communicators are born and not made. And I think that this across the board, right? We've all met those people that seem to have that natural talent and we could never be as good of a speaker as them, whether you say a lot or you're too quiet or all those things. And you watch these amazing people, whether it's on TV or in radio, and you're like, they're so good. But what you're saying is some of these, maybe they are born, but they can be made too, right? So like this myth about them being only born is kind of wrong.
Yeah, that would be a little limiting. So the thing is, it applies to both. So let's talk about interpersonal communication. And let me ask you this question. So do you have any hobbies, Ashley?
I do. Yeah. I like to play music and
Okay.
I like to hike.
All right. So are you any good at music? Do you think
I'm
you're any good?
okay.
Okay. And so do you practice much?
I would say I did, and I was better when I practiced more often.
Okay.
I don't have the
Okay.
time as much now to give to it.
So this is my point. that anything that we get good at, anything that we learn to master, is because we spent time doing it
Mm.
and we practice it. And that is also true with communications. And that's also true with the public speaking. So, a lot of times people will think that someone is like a genius or really skilled, and that's why they're a public speaker. The thing is, here's that talent and genius don't guarantee success. So
Mm.
just practice anything that we practice. There's a theory by Malcolm Gladwell that we become experts at something when we spend at least 10,000 hours practicing. So if you want to get better at it, you got to practice it. And that's basically it. And I also think that sometimes when people do have more of a knack for something, that they kind of slack off because
Mm.
they know it's kind of easy. Like, did you know someone is really smart? They didn't seem to have to study. And it might have worked for a while, but, and the others of us are kind of begrudgingly putting our time in. But that pays off. So you learn a lot in the process. So anyway, basic point, practice.
Oh, I love that. And I hope none of my music teachers were listening right now that I had like when I was younger, because they're probably like, she doesn't practice anymore. But what a great point.
Well, you're
And
excused because you've been
oh,
busy.
oh, thanks. Yeah, busy. Yeah. But such a great point. And when you think about developing skills, and those that really have to work at it actually develop tools to work at it, where those that it comes natural to don't even know where to start when they, like, I would say, plateau, to get to that next point.
Totally. I mean, we see that in the sports world a lot, that
Mm.
there's some athletes that are really excellent and they really don't put the time in. And long term, I'm not saying it happens all the time, but the people that work at it regularly, it will pay off.
I feel like that should be taught to us young, like working for anything. There's a certain point where you got to put in more effort to get better.
Well, it's a really good point. And if you talk to anybody, I think that's a misconception that we have maybe in our culture, because we see the end result of things and we
Mm.
see people that have become successful, but we don't know what they've done day to day to really earn that. And if you talk to most people, I suppose there's always exceptions. There's somebody who walks into something and it just happened easily. But anybody who's really achieved success, I guarantee you they put a lot of time into it. They're not telling you about it. They're not sharing that necessarily, but you see the end result.
Speaking of which, your next myth gets a little more personal, and I really like this one. And then I'm like, ooh, ouch, do I do this? But the myth is that in close relationships, we shouldn't have to communicate our needs. And I feel like this seems common sense, but at the same time, we all forget it. So can you explain why this is important, and maybe like what good practices we could put in place?
I guess it's one of a big reason, not necessarily the main reason, but a big reason for relationship issues is that people don't know their own needs, and we also don't know other people's needs. And so as a result of that, we don't express things directly to people. So that could be, that can result in, or the other thing is, you could get into the whole psychology of it. It's, it could be expectation. Like if someone really cared, we have this expectation they should know things. So here's really what needs to be done is that uh, is is to recognize, when you start recognize your own needs, then I think we're more aware of other people's needs too, or we also are more accepting of other people's needs. But here's the big question: how do you know? And you can think about this for yourself or for others. So how do you know what people's needs are? Okay, or how might you know your own needs? Well, number one, you can ask. Okay. How you can ask yourself, gee, what am I needing right now? And some things are obvious: if you're hungry, if you're tired, okay, you need sleep. But here's something else that people might not think about that makes it really easy. Notice things about people. Notice what people complain about. That tells you what they need. Okay, they're not getting something. Notice requests that people make. That also lets you know what they need. And then the other thing is, it used to be this joke that we often give people gifts that we like, okay, as opposed to what they
Yeah.
like, right? So notice what other people give to other people, because that's telling you something that they probably like or appreciate.
Mm.
Now, there's a great book, just as a reference, that's called The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And it gives you examples of 5 different ways that people feel valued in the workplace. It's different ways that you can communicate with them. So, for example, words of appreciation, someone acknowledging what you do, that's a way to communicate. But I won't go through them all. But one last thing that I wanted to say is that, and I know you know about this because corporate college has a course on the platinum rule. So we've gone from the golden rule, which is giving people what we like, and now it's really being aware so we can give others what they need, what they like.
Oh yeah,
So
that's
that's
in our effective communication
right,
course.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm thinking about all the work Christmas gift exchanges and things I've gotten. And now I'm going like, okay, that person likes that or needs that. But it's really good to think about when you're on a team with someone too, to identify their needs. And also sometimes when you're not feeling like your own needs are met, maybe why, and maybe, you might need to communicate them. So do you have any tips on communicating those better to other people?
Well, yeah, one of them is I don't know if you've heard of, let's say, using iMessages. So very often what happens is when somebody's doing something, like I was never a morning person, okay? I'm
Okay.
now.
And I
I
totally am.
remember, okay, oh, are you? Now I am. But I remember in college and I lived in whatever a big house, and people would always like in the morning they'd be talking to me, and I never said I'm not a morning person. I would just kind of move in the corner, okay? And so the thing is that one, and then what I would be thinking is, gosh, why does that person have to talk so much?
Mhm.
Okay, it's really not about them. What we need to do is translate like our feelings actually reveal our needs. That's the simplest way. So when we're feeling good, we're feeling content, that actually shows that our needs are being met. But if we're frustrated or angry, it's showing that some need of ours is not being met. We just have to translate it into language. Like what I could have said is, can we talk later? I'm just not real alert right now. Real simple, and people would have said, oh, sure, no problem. So it's just, it's that self-awareness. That's really a starting point for a lot of our communication. And then we can just we have to practice if we're not used to it.
Mhm.
Start telling people simple things like, this is what I need, or can we do this later? Or I love that idea, but I just can't focus right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So I'm reflecting on some of the things, maybe even over my own journey. I remember when I first started a job on Monday mornings at 9 a.m., there would be a meeting. Well, when I walked in Monday morning at 8 a.m., an hour before that meeting, and had to do reports for that meeting, I was also bombarded with a phone full of voicemails and emails from the weekend that I had to return. And it took me almost a full year, like a whole season of 4 seasons, to finally figure out, because I was getting very frustrated and overwhelmed, that I needed to communicate to my manager at the time, like, hey, can we move this to an hour later, a different day? And
Yeah.
and once I was able to put that into words, my whole week changed, because that Monday morning I didn't dread going in. I wasn't frustrated just for the meeting itself, and it just got better. And it's funny, those little things, and I hadn't really thought about that until you put that into context. So that was really
Hmm.
helpful.
Good, good. Well, like I said before, it's that we need to know our own needs so we can express them to other people. And
Mhm.
we can't be responsible for knowing other people's needs all the time. However, like I said, when you notice other people, it'll become obvious to you if they're not expressing it. Oh, yeah, it looks like this person, if they're complaining, they obviously need that. Okay. So, and that's
Mhm.
just kind of a helpful tool.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you. So that's a myth that got even better for me debunked.
Listen, work through years of therapy doing this,
Yeah. I feel like that's what these sessions do for me. I learned so much about myself.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's a very selfish endeavor,
Your
but I'll do
husband
it.
really probably appreciates
He
it.
probably does.
Sure.
That's a good point. Um, okay, well, this third myth, I absolutely loved it when you sent it to me, which is experienced speakers don't get nervous while public speaking. So let's dig into this. Do people that are experienced get nervous? And then if they do, how do they avoid it? And how can someone who's new to public speaking start avoiding it?
Hmm. Okay. Well, so there's a quote by Mark Twain that says there are two types of speakers: those who get nervous and those who are liars.
That's perfect.
So I suppose, because I'm not one of those who does not get nervous. I do get nervous. So I'm sure there's some people who don't. So I don't want to say 100% of people. I can't speak for other people, but I will say that it is not an unusual thing for somebody to get nervous. The problem isn't getting nervous. That's not a problem at all. The problem is what you do with it.
Mm.
Okay. It's just like that thing, I'm quoting these kind of slogans, but there's truth to them. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do with it. So here's the thing about getting nervous. Sometimes people will translate that to mean, oh, I'm going to fail, or I can't do a good job. The way that I interpret it, I don't mean just for myself, but for others, I frequently think that when people get nervous, it means that they care, that they're invested in it, that they want a good outcome. And that's a very good sign, actually. So being nervous is not the issue, it's what we do with it. So number one, to recognize that it'll probably come up. But the other thing is, I know for myself and I've coached and I taught public speaking for years, and I facilitate the workshop on dynamic presentation skills, is that it really, couple things, is that you want to be prepared and you want to practice. Okay, because when you know your material, then even though you're nervous, it's not like you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say. And so for example, it depends on the context of your speaking, but being prepared in some context may mean that you have an outline so you can gaze over what you're going to say. So if for some reason when you get nervous your mind goes blank for a moment, you still got something to look at, or maybe it's in your visuals. So you're not left without some support there. And the other thing is that I rehearse. I mean, I definitely rehearse, not so that it sounds memorized, but one, so I know the material, and two, that it sounds natural. And this is the irony. The more you know your material and have it, have practice it, the more you can make it sound more normal or natural. I mean really rehearsing it, going over it, speaking it. I used to walk the dog around the block and I'd speak out loud, be talking
Oh,
it
wow.
aloud and practicing. So at least people thought, well, with the dog, they thought I was talking to someone. It didn't look too weird. Now with
Yeah.
everyone with phones, it doesn't look strange when you're talking to yourself. But I want to say one other thing, that it really helps if if you have the opportunity to talk about subjects that you care about. Because then again, when you have something you care about, even if you're nervous about it, the public speaking is such a great way to get your message out, that it's worth it. And you can make a difference.
That quote you said from Mark Twain is that everybody gets nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, that actually a lot of times means you care about what you're delivering. It's not that you don't care, it's you want it to be good.
Right. And the thing is too, just we were talking about understanding our needs and our feelings. It's possible that sometimes what we are interpreting as a feeling of nervousness might actually be excitement.
That turns it all on its
So,
head.
yeah. And it could be, we're just like, whoa, we're just raring to go to get it out there.
Thank you for sharing and debunking these 3 myths with us. But I want to take it a step further too. If someone wants to be better at communicating, whether it's interpersonally or in public speaking, what steps would you encourage someone to take?
One thing I would say about public speaking is that one way to get better is listen to other public speakers, because you pick up tips. You'll notice what you like, notice what you don't like, you incorporate it. That's how we learn and grow. We borrow from one another. So take advantage of any opportunities. I do it all the time. And I don't go to just listen to them. I'm interested in the content, but it's a great way to do 2 things at the same time. Another thing is, with both the interpersonal and the public speaking, there's lots of great workshops. There's lots of great classes to take. I continue to take classes from time to time, just because, you get a different perspective. It might refresh some of your ideas and some of your skills. So I would definitely do that. Corporate college, for example, offers, and Tri-C in adult education offers lots of different, they're the soft skills programs. So whether it's for personal development or for professional development, those really work. And the last thing I would say is, sometimes some people really benefit from going to a coach, and it could be for a small group experience or one-on-one. That way they can really focus on the things that you're interested in working on.
That's awesome. Those are all such helpful tips, because I think going back to myth number one, we think people are born with those skills, but if we could develop them for ourselves, how much would that help us along our journeys?
It is just something that we need to practice, just to build on a little bit. So it's a choice. If you have an interest, if someone has an interest in something, whether it's for personal or professional gain, I would pursue it because that's telling you something. So
Mm.
follow that feeling, and there's lots of different options for how you can grow in those areas.
That is a perfect way to end this conversation, Andrea, with this push for people to, get out, and if you have an interest, do what you love and seek it out. My interest in music, I took lessons because I wanted to get better at it. I'm going to go pick up my guitar and practice right after this call, but
We kind of guilt you into that
yeah,
one.
that's right. But thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a pleasure talking with you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And actually, next time, I'd like to join you. Could you start with playing your guitar? I'd like to.
Ooh, I'll think about it.
Okay, give it some thought.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ashley.
Yeah. Well, and those of you out there on Facebook listening to Andrea's great tips today, if you want to find out more information about corporate college and a lot of the great programs that we offer also at Tri-C, please visit the link in the descriptions. And until next time, stay safe.